Hi, this is Paul Muscle. In this video I'm going to be talking about Revelation 20 verses 10 through 15. At least primarily that's going to be the subject. This is going to be part of a series of several videos that I'm doing about hell and the final state of the wicked, whether they are, I'm mostly talking about whether they're going to be tortured forever and ever or if they're going to be permanently destroyed so that they'll never be resurrected again. And so I'll get right into it by reading this passage. Revelation 20 verse 10 says, "And the devil who deceived them was thrown into the lake of burning sulfur, where the beast and the false prophet have been thrown. They'll be tormented day and night forever and ever. Then I saw a great white throne and him who was seated on it. The earth and the heavens fled from his presence, and there was no place for them. And I saw the dead, great and small, standing before the throne, and books were opened. Another book was opened, which is the book of life. The dead were judged according to what they had done, as recorded in the books. The sea gave up the dead that were in it, and death and Hades gave up the dead that were in them. And each person was judged according to what they had done. Then death and Hades were thrown into the lake of fire. The lake of fire is the second death. Anyone whose name was not found written in the book of life was thrown into the lake of fire." Okay, so going back to verse 10, the devil, false prophet, and the beast are all going to be, or will be thrown into the lake of fire where they'll be tormented for day and night forever and ever. Okay, and then after that, everybody else whose name was not written in the Lamb's book of life was thrown into the lake of fire. And they all suffer the second death, because that's what the lake of fire is said to be, is the second death. Okay, so there's a few perspectives of this passage. There's three that I'm going to talk about. One is the idea that all the people and the devil and the false prophet and the beast are all going to be kept alive forever in this place of this lake of fire, so that they could be tormented without end. That's one possibility. The other possibility is that the devil and the false prophet and the beast will all be tortured forever and ever without end, and that everybody else that's thrown in there will ultimately be destroyed, because it does not actually say that everybody else is going to be tortured or tormented forever and ever. It only says that specifically and explicitly about the beast and the false prophet and the devil. And so some people think that the devil and the false prophet and the beast will be tormented forever and ever, and everybody else will be tormented for some period of time and then destroyed in that place. And the other perspective is that all these entities are going to be totally destroyed at some point. That there will not be even one person, one being that's left still suffering after some perhaps very long period of time has passed. So how do people understand these passages to mean these three different things? Okay, one is, the simplest one is probably the idea that everybody is going to be tortured without end and kept alive just so that they can experience this torture. And it's basically said, well, it's explicit in verse 10 that the devil and the false prophet and the beast are going to be tortured without end. They're going to be kept alive so that they can suffer forever and ever. And because these other people are going to be put in the same place, then it's reasonable to say that they will be suffering the same fate. So it's a pretty straightforward argument. Okay, the second option, which is to say that the devil and the false prophet and the beast will be tormented forever and ever, but everybody else will be destroyed permanently, and after some period of time will not be suffering because they're going to be fully dead. They would say, people that believe that would say that, okay, it does say, it's pretty explicit that the devil and the false prophet and the beast are going to be tormented forever and ever, so we can't really get away from that. But it doesn't say that about the rest of everybody, and because it refers to the lake of fire as a second death, and because there's a lot of other passages in the Bible that talk about the end of the wicked being death, destruction, perishing, and all the metaphors in the Old Testament that talk about the end of the wicked all point in that direction. I'll say, well, maybe the devil and the false prophet and the beast are going to be tormented forever, but everybody else is going to be destroyed. And because it's not explicitly said that that's what's in this passage, that people will be tormented forever and ever. So they can make a distinction there between, yeah, everybody's going to be thrown into the same place, but they're not all going to suffer the same thing, because the devil and the false prophet and the beast are going to be kept alive, so they keep on suffering forever and ever, and everybody else is going to be destroyed. And then the third perspective is, of course, like I said, that everybody that goes in this place is eventually going to be destroyed, even if it's much longer for some than for others before they finally are destroyed. Okay. I think I'm going to focus on next this idea of they'll be tormented day and night forever and ever. And I want to talk about this forever and ever phrase. It is translated forever and ever in English from the double use of the word aionios in Greek. I think that's how you pronounce it, or close. It basically is, it's the word in Greek that can be used to mean ages or eternal. And it's used twice here. So it is possible, most people don't think this, but it is possible, most people don't come to this conclusion, but it is possible that aionios, or however you pronounce it, could mean ages of the ages, or ages upon ages, but not necessarily endless. And that's what I actually believe, that all these people, even the devil and the false prophet and the beast, that everyone is going to be destroyed eventually. Some people it may be almost instantaneous. Other people it may be carry on for a while. For the devil and the false prophet and the beast, it may last a very long time before they're finally destroyed. But that eventually everybody is going to be destroyed. Why do I think this? Okay, I'm going to go back to Matthew chapter 25, verse 41. This is one of the verses that I talked about once before in another video that is actually frequently cited to support the idea that people will be tormented forever and ever. Because this is Jesus, he's talking, he says, "Then he will say to those on his left, 'Depart from me, you who are cursed, into the eternal fire, prepared for the devil and his angels.'" So he's talking to the people on his left, all the wicked, that they will be going into the same eternal fire that was prepared for the devil and his angels. Okay. The reason I bring that up is that Jude, in Jude 1, verse 7, tells us what eternal fire is. He says, "In a similar way, Sodom and Gomorrah and the surrounding towns gave themselves up to sexual immorality and perversion. They serve as an example of those who suffer the punishment of eternal fire." Okay. If Jude, is saying that Sodom and Gomorrah and what already happened to them is what serves as an example for us to know what the punishment of eternal fire is, then we have to look back at what happened to Sodom and Gomorrah to see what does this eternal fire do. They suffered eternal fire, and if they suffered eternal fire, what did that eternal fire do to them? Well, in Genesis, I'm trying to find the chapters, 19 or 29, I think. I can't remember. Abraham looks back the day after that Sodom and Gomorrah had been destroyed by all the fire and brimstone raining down from heaven, and he sees that the whole place has been destroyed, and that there's just smoke rising up all over the place from all the fire that burned it up. And so that city has never been rebuilt. It's gone. And so if Jude is correct in the tense that he is using this, that they did serve as an example of what eternal fire does, and he's not talking about just that, okay, everybody's eventually going to face this judgment. of the final judgment, that everybody's going to be resurrected to face judgment. If he was pointing to that fate of Sodom and Gomorrah, the people that were in Sodom and Gomorrah, and that they are going to suffer the fate of eternal fire, then it doesn't really make very much sense for him, from my way of thinking, to say that they serve as an example of what eternal fire does. Because if he's talking about the final judgment, something that still has not happened, then nobody can see what still has not happened to Sodom and Gomorrah. So they're not an example. There's no example for us to witness or see what happened in the future, because it hasn't happened yet. If, however, what he's talking about is the actual judgment that already took place on Sodom and Gomorrah, which I think is the clear meaning of this passage, then they suffered the punishment of eternal fire. And they were an example of what that is like. So if Sodom and Gomorrah, what already happened to them, is an example of what eternal fire does, and it destroys permanently, and that's what Jesus said that the eternal fire that was created for the devil and his angels does. And the devil and his angels are going to be tormented forever and ever, or aionios, in the lake of fire. Then what that means to me is Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed. That shows us what eternal fire did, or does. That's the fate of the devil and his angels, is eternal fire. That's their fate. And so if that's their fate, then we can, I think, rightly understand this passage in Revelation 20, verse 10, to mean that they will suffer for some extended period of time, perhaps many thousands of years, in fire, being tormented, but eventually they'll be destroyed, because that's what eternal fire does. It's not fire that keeps on burning forever and ever and ever, and therefore all the people and entities of whatever kind that are in there will continue to suffer in it. Eternal fire is fire that destroys permanently. According to Jude, if he's to be believed, then I think this is the most reasonable way to understand this. So hopefully that makes sense. Not everybody agrees, of course, on this, and there may be more differences than I'm even aware of about the way people understand this passage, but that's the way I think about it. That's why I understand the scriptures that appear to be relevant. I hope that hearing what I have had to say has been helpful to you. Will help you when you read these passages for yourself and you see what they say and you pore over these things and you see, what does this really mean? And you narrow down the passages in Scripture that really need to be considered, because the Bible's long, and so not every passage, not every chapter, not even every book necessarily talks about the final state of the wicked. But there's a lot of places that do, and there's a few places that people think mean that the wicked will be tormented forever and ever. So if we're going to have a coherent perspective of what the biblical message is, then we need to consider those passages too. We can't just look at the ones that seem to say the thing that maybe we like better and ignore the rest. We have to deal with the scriptures that are there. And I think this is the best way to deal with these. So hopefully that makes sense. Please comment and critique me if there's some point that I have made badly, or any constructive criticism would be appreciated. Any other comments will be welcome. And if you like the video, like it. If you didn't like it, dislike it. And subscribe if you're interested in hearing more about what I have to say about these things. Hopefully they'll be helpful to you and other people that you can share it with that need to think these things through too. So may God bless you. Have a good day.